Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the part 2 of object-oriented programming present in Python. In the first lecture, in the previous video, we have talked about class, the concept of class and object, how is those things are different, and we have seen an example of an organization where many employees are working and we have defined a class employee for that organization, and we have also defined some of the instance under this class, which is M1 and M2 if you remember the previous lecture. Then we have seen how you can define some of the attributes to an instance, which is nothing but the value of a variable of an instance which it can access. And also we have talked about the concept of instance specific method, which is a set of functions that is available for instance. It's all defined within the class, and all the instance under that class are eligible to access those functions, which known as instance specific methods. Well, we haven't seen the explicit example for that one, but we have seen the example for constructor and destructor, which is nothing but a instance specific method, a special kind of instance specific method. While constructor runs at every point when you define an instance under a class, destructor runs at the endpoint. So if in the code there is no more uses of class or instance under that class, then this destructor will call and it will delete all the class and instance to clear up some of the space in the memory. So this is what we have done till now, and right now the first thing which I'm gonna do, I will create, oops, I forgot to indent it. I'm going to create an instance specific method and I will call it as email. And let's say this email will not take any argument. And even though it's not taking any argument, still we need to pass this self, which is a placeholder for the instance itself, which is the first argument for any method defined under a class. And here I can say return self, the placeholder or the instance, and I will grab the first name attribute of that instance, and will do a concatenation with underscore, and will again do a concatenation with the self dot last name, then we'll again do a concatenation with @ of gmail.com. By the way, this plus symbol means also concatenation. It means addition but also means concatenation, which you can do, which you can perform on string. And here I can say print and say emp1, because we have already defined emp1 here, emp1 instance, and I will pass this method email. And this is a method, that's why I need to open and close the parenthesis to specify to Python that this is a method of that instance, not an attribute of that instance. So if I will just go ahead and run it, you can see the email ID is printing, because this method will return an email ID with this format. Okay, this method also a part of a class employee, so we can also access it by an employee class, so employee dot email. Now if I will just go ahead and print these two things, it should return the same thing, because this here I'm grabbing it from the class and here I'm grabbing it from the instance method. So if I will just go ahead and run it, you can see there is an error in the second line. It's because you can see, if you read the message, you can see this missing one argument. Well, right now in earlier cases, in the previous cases, we are using emp1 instance, then use the method, then accessing the method of that instance. So we don't have to explicitly define this emp1 instance within this parenthesis. But here we are accessing this method from the class only. So we need to specify the instance here, and ask Python to perform this method on that instance. So here we can say emp1. So that means grab this method from this employee and perform it on the employee one. And here grab the employee one, then perform this method. So there is a minute difference. If you now go ahead and run it, you can see the result are same. So here you can see that this email method actually returning the email ID but not storing this email ID anywhere within the instance. What if I want to store this email ID as an attribute within the instance. So I can do that. Instead of return, I can put self, which is the placeholder for that instance. Then I will create an attribute called email ID and will assign it to this operation. So whatever this operation will splits out, I will assign it to the email ID attribute of that instance. Now if I will just delete this one and run it, you can see this one will return none, because this particular method, this emp1 this email method on emp1 actually not returning anything, but rather creating an attribute called email ID. So now if I will just say emp1 and put a dot operator, you can see there are a list of methods and attributes you can access for emp1, and here the email ID is one of them. And this is the attribute, not a method, so we don't need to put open and close parentheses after this one. So we just have to say print emp1 and email ID, and that should give you the result of the email ID of that instance. Now, if I will just do the same thing for emp2 and put a dot operator here, you can see there is nothing called email ID because we haven't performed this email method yet. So if I will just go ahead and run it, need to save it and run it, there is nothing new. But if you say emp2 and dot, you will see there is also an attribute called email ID for this one, and you can access this one by using a dot operator emp2 dot email ID, and you can say print, and when you run it, you can see the email ID for the second instance as well. Now let's talk about class variable first, then we will move to the class method, then we will conclude this video. To explain class variable, let me define another instance specific method called raise amount. So this will increase the monthly pay. So raise dot amount, and here likewise all instance specific method, this will also take the instance as a first argument, which by convention we call as self. And right now I can say raise dot amount raise dot month pay cross equal to a factor, let's say 1 as of now. We will change it after some time, after a minute, but let me put it 1 as of now, and let me delete this one. And right now I can say print emp1 dot month pay, so I'm accessing month pay attribute from emp1 before the raise amount, and I will apply this raise amount method on emp1, and then I will access this amount right now. Now if I will just go ahead and run it, you will see both should be same because the factor is 1. Now how this factor will calculate, let me give you the formula. I invented a formula. Let's say this factor is based on the two multiplication of two factor. One is the company factor, which I will call as company factor, and I will assign it as 1.5. Let's say company performed very well last year. And also it also depends upon emp factors, which I will call emp factor, which is employee factor, and how this employee perform over the year, and it is minimum 1. Okay, so this is the company factor, how this company perform over the year, and this is the employee how they perform over the year. And by default employee factor is 1 and company factor is 1.5 for last year. Irrespective of which employee you are taking into consideration, it will always be same, that is 1.5. And for this one I can say comp factor into employee factor. Okay, so the product of these two factor so product of these two factor will decide the raise amount. So how much it should raise is will depend upon the company factor, how the company will perform, and how the employee will perform. And now if I will just go ahead and run it, you will see there is an error. Why? Because this what we have defined, it's called class variable, because you are defining under this class, and this class variable is, as this is a part of class, you can access it via class or the instance only. So here, and we are accessing by none. So we are just giving the name as company factor, but Python doesn't know where it's come from. So you should specify either by the class name, so employee dot the company factor and employee dot the emp factor. Now if we just go ahead and run it, now it's doing okay. Now that what it should expect, because 30,000, earlier it was 30,000, right now 1 into 1.5, which should be 45,000. Okay, but also you can access it via the instance, because this is a class specific method. Now instance with is defined within this class, so you should access this class variables from the instance. So you can either put employee as a class name employee, or you can put the instance name, which is self, as a placeholder. We are using by convention self as a name. Now if we will just go ahead and run it, you can see it's actually printing the same thing as previous. Now let me perform the similar action for emp2 as well. Okay, now I will change it to 2, and if I will just go ahead and run it, so this is the earlier amount of AMP1, previous year amount, monthly amount, and this is the this year monthly amount of AMP1, and this is the previous year month amount of AMP2, and this is the this year month amount of AMP2 after the application of the raise. But what if not what if we want that this employee factor should not be constant or should not be fixed for every employee? In that way, this will not give any motivation for to the employee to perform better than anyone else. So this will not bring the competition. So we need to give different ratings or different factor to each employee. Let's say Smruti performed little bit less as compared to Vijay. Now for this, I will say amp factor is 1. I don't need to change anything. For here, for Vijay, let me change it to amp 2, amp 2, and here I can say amp factor is equal to 2. Okay, so now what I'm saying here is amp factor by default is 1. So it is a class variable. By default it is 1. That means is unless until you change something here, it will be remain as 1. And right now I'm changing m factor of m2 only. That means for m2 this m factor is 2, but for rest of the instance it would be same as the class variable, which is 1. Now if I will just go ahead and run it, you will see the raise amount is 45,000 for Smruti. It is same as the previous, but for Vijay, it actually increased twice, because last time it was 75,000 and this year is 1,50,000. Hope you get the intuition what is the difference between class variable and instance variable. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about class method. And for this one, let me clear everything till here, and first thing what you need to do for class, to define a class method, you need to create a decorator. And what decorator is, as of now, just think this as a keyword. So you can use this decorator or a keyword. For now you can think like that, method. And so this decorator will allow us to use the method to take class as an input variable, as an argument to a method rather than the instance. So example in this example here, you are using self as a placeholder for the instance variable, or the instance. And here for the class method you can use, let's say for example I can use a class method called comp amount and use CLS. Now CLS is the argument which we pass as a placeholder for the class. So here we are using self as a placeholder for the instance, and the instance method will take instance as a first argument, and in the class method class itself will be the first argument for that method. Oops, I'm sorry, I have to make amount, my bad, sorry. So as I was saying, uh, class is the first argument for the class method, and here by convention we are using CLS, and here by convention we are using self. You can use any other keyword or any other word instead of CLS, but by convention we use CLS. And after comma you can pass any other arguments you want, and here let me put amount as another argument. And what this will do, it will change the employee factor, so sorry, the company factor. So company factor is by default 1.5, but for example if I want to change the company factor in the next consecutive year, I can do that by using this class method. And if I will just perform this class method, it will update this class variable to this amount. Okay, so now if I will just go ahead and say comp factor comp amount, and here I will just pass the amount which I would like to be the company factor in the next year. Let me put 1.6 as the company factor for the next year. Okay, and you don't need to specify the class because class is the the first argument, and here we are by default we are using oops, sorry, here we need to specify employee the class. Okay, or else Python has no idea where this comp amount is coming from. So we are using employee as a class name, so we don't need to pass class name as a first argument explicitly. Okay, same thing what we have seen for instance specific method. Here also we don't need to pass employee explicitly. Okay, now if I will just go ahead and run it, before that I need to show you the difference. Okay, now here I can access this class variable emp dot comp factor, and here I can say print, and this is for emp1. So I'm grabbing the company factor from emp1, emp2, and also I'm grabbing the company factor from the employee class as well. And after the application of this class method, that the company amount, it should be 1.6 for all the cases. Now if I will just go ahead and run it, you can see earlier it was 1.5 for emp1, emp2, employee class, and emp1 instance and emp2 instance. And after the application of this class method, it actually changed to 1.6 for all three cases, for a class as well as for all the instance as well. Okay, let's pause it here. I thought I will cover static method in this tutorial, but nevertheless let's park this one for the next video. And I know we have covered a lot of things in this tutorial, and if you have any question and comments till now, please feel free to drop them in the comment section, or else thanks for watching. Thanks for all your likes and subscription. Until next time, cheers.